Welcome all, welcome to New Jersey's Local News Revolution. My name is Simon Galperin. I'm a JSK Stanford Fellow this last year of 2022. Also joined by another JSK Fellow, Brit, Harley, who you'll be hearing from later today. I'm excited to be presenting this slate of speakers today, this series of lightning chats today, because these people are my peers, are people I look up to, and I'm excited to share what they're doing in this state. We're going to hear from folks from Atlantic City, Trenton, Newark. We have folks who live in the Camden area, folks who live in Philadelphia who are working on projects in New Jersey. We have people from all over the state with all different backgrounds making media work for the people. So I'm gonna get started by introducing Erin, introducing all of our speakers. So if you could all turn on your cameras for us and say hello. We have Erin O'Hanlon from Stories of Atlantic City. We have Stephanie Murray from the Center for Cooperative Media. We have Brit Harley from the Newark News and Story Collaborative and 5 Words Media. We have Vanessa Maria Graber from the NJ Community Media Collective and Free Press. We have CASSANDRA, who will be speaking about the South Jersey Information Equity Project from the Center for Cooperative Media. We have Kenneth Miles from the one and only Trenton Journal. And of course, Mike Rispoli from Free Press, speaking for the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium. So I'm really excited to hear from all these folks. We'll start with local projects. We'll hear about all the amazing things happening locally, and then we will move on to hearing from folks who are working at the state level to organize news and information for our community. So if you aren't speaking now, you can turn off your camera, and I'm going to give it to Erin. Erin, please tell us about you, the amazing work you do, and your vision for community media in New Jersey.
Thank you so much, Simon. So it's really a great opportunity to be here. I really appreciate being able to speak with you all and to talk about Stories of Atlantic City, which is actually a project I really love. So Stories of Atlantic City is a collaborative project. We're really focused on telling restorative narrative, the untold stories of the city and its people. We really are 3 parts. So we're a community organizing and outreach organization. We're also what I would consider hyper-local digital media outlet as well. And we're an education resource. So we're based at Stockton University, and we are supported by both Stockton University. We're also funded from the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. And we've been fortunate enough to receive funding from the New Jersey Local Lab Fund as well, which is funded from the Community Fund and in partnership with the Dodge Foundation and the Democracy Fund as well. And honestly, we got our start really through Free Press. There was an organization called IBOH that was very fundamental that came to Atlantic City to talk about restorative narratives and what that means. And that was in 2017. When we first got our start. And from there, we have grown to include positions, community organizer positions. We have 17 community reporting fellows. And we have done stories that have been collaborative with faculty members and courses here at the university. And we really are hoping and looking to change the narrative of Atlantic City. So lots of times when we initially sit down with folks and talk about what is the narrative of Atlantic City, you know, it's a lot of talk about the casinos, it's a lot of talk about the boardwalk, but it's also talk about maybe, you know, the disparity that is part of the city as well, and also some of the struggles that the city has had. And of course, we always want to talk about the fabulous residents of Atlantic City and the creative things they do and the resiliency. So during the pandemic, for example, we had a whole series of stories called Resilient Restaurants, right? What were restaurants doing? How were they pivoting during the pandemic? And most of them were small business owners, right? And some of the tough decisions that they had to make. So it was a real opportunity for us to be able to to showcase some of that work. And sometimes, people will say, well, it sounds like you do a lot of soft news. In fact, we have really started to move into much more critical information, really civic engagement information. For example, we follow City Bureau's model of the documenters. That's our community reporting fellows. And they report on Board of Education meetings, council meetings in the city. And it's about, housing authority meetings, right? CREDA, which is our Casino Redevelopment Authority. It's really about getting that information out into the public in a very accessible way. That's something that, has not previously, we are kind of in a media desert in Atlantic City. And so it's an opportunity we haven't previously had. We've also had a lot of partnerships with local media as well. We don't have much, but we do have a daily paper called the Atlantic City Press. We have a couple of digital sites based out of Atlantic City, and we've had some partnerships with them. And we're getting ready to have an ongoing relationship in the fall with the Press of Atlantic City. We're going to have what we're calling a community reporting lab based out of Atlantic City, and the press is going to be able to access that as well. It's going to be their sort of press room in Atlantic City. We're going to be able to do that and integrate it with education as well. So I just want to say again, this has been collaborative. We would never have been able to do it solo. And what we really gained from the New Jersey partnership is so much information, so much opportunities, so much great ideas, and sort of the stronger collective power together, I think is really important as well. So, I can't say enough about how championing a city, it has really, even though I have grown up in the area and have lived in the area my whole life, every day there are things that I learn about what's going on in Atlantic City or what's going on within, segments of Atlantic City or the community that I had no idea. And so it's really just about being able to tell those stories that we know are going on that are not really being able to be showcased as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for sharing that. If anyone has any questions for Erin, feel free to drop them in the chat. If we don't get them in our conversation, or rather feel free to drop them in the Q&A. If we don't get to them during our conversation, I will do my best to relay those questions, get y'all some answers afterwards. So next up on our list of venerable speakers is Kenneth Miles, founder and publisher of the Trenton Journal. Kenneth, feel free to take yourself on video, put your video on, and let us hear from you about the Trenton Journal, what your work is, who you are, and what your vision for community media in your community is. And remember to turn on your camera.
There we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Kenneth Miles. I am the founder and editor of the Trenton Journal. We are a newsletter that's published twice a week, and I created the newsletter about 2 years ago when I moved to Trenton, New Jersey. I'm originally from Jersey City, New Jersey. So when my family and I moved to Trenton, I had a lot of questions. A lot of people told me, they asked me why was I moving to Trenton. They warned me against moving to Trenton. They said it was violent. They said it's a lot of blight in the city. But the journalist in me, when I came to the town to be a part of the community, I found a lot of people who were doing great things. It reminded me a lot of where I grew up in, I'm originally from Jersey City, New Jersey. So I saw the beauty and I saw the strength in the people who were taking care of their families and taking care of their communities. And that's not often reported. So I wanted to be a part of highlighting the people who are doing great things within the city, as well as filling in information gaps. So some of the things that we've reported on that I'm proud of, what we're doing right now is we are doing profiles of the candidates who are running for council in the mayor's office. And I'm really proud of that because the last election, the voter turnout was really low. Maybe like 20 or 30% of the residents came out. And I thought that in order for people to make an informed decision, that they need to know more about the candidates. So I created a profile called Meet the Candidates, where people have the opportunity to ask the prospective candidates questions about their platform, and for the candidates to have an opportunity to get to meet the people. So that's really important to me. We created a series of articles called My Trenton Story, where I had the opportunity to work with a lot of Trenton area high school students to help them find their voice and tell stories that were important to them living in Trenton, going to school in the area. So it was just wonderful for me to work with a group of students who never really considered writing as a career, but just to sit down and find out some of the things that are interesting to them in their lives. So that's really important to me. And also have an opportunity to work with people who are college age students and figuring out what's going on in their world, because I started out in journalism at a very early age. I was 15 years old. I started writing for my hometown newspaper called the Jersey Journal. And that literally saved my life. It gave me a voice. It helped me to shed light to a lot of different subject matters that wasn't discussed upon when I was growing up in Jersey City. And I feel the same thing about Trenton. Trenton's a beautiful place, but it needs work. It needs work. People need to feel heard. People need to feel heard. So I'm proud of the work that we do here. And I wanted to speak specifically about community building. And I want to remind people that when you are working on media projects and, if you have an online publication, a newsletter or website, it's important to go out and be amongst the people, and sometimes we can get lost writing and researching and reporting, but it's really important to go out and speak with the people. And to me, that's one of the things that I found most effective in terms of building community, is letting people get the opportunity to hear my voice, see my face, feel my sincerity when it comes to reporting, because I'm not only reporting about Trenton, but I live here as well. And the bigger vision that I have for this newsletter is in some way for the community to take it over. And, we just have a group of community journalists who are telling your stories via podcast and newsletters, social media, even TikTok videos, which is something that I'm not aware of, but speaking with a group of young people, that's their thing, so I'm learning. I'm also imparting some of my skills and my knowledge of me being a journalist, and just creating something that I believe in. I also created the Trenton Journal because there's a news desert here as well, and people are hurting. And I will just say this much as well, like, I believe in empowering people, but in order to empower people, you need to give them the information that they need, and also understand that we all can advocate in different ways. Some people may not have the capacity to go out and march, but you may have the capacity to go out and vote. You may have the capacity to share an article with your neighbor in terms of resources when it comes to finding food, or finding information in terms of paying your electric bill. So we all could do a little bit of something. So I'm just going to keep doing what I do and continue to build on the community that we built thus far, but it takes absolutely going out and meeting people and showing that you care, because people can feel when you are sincere. People don't like to be reported on. People like to feel like you are part of the community and you're helping to push them forward. I'm pushing them forward because I'm helping to push my family forward as well, because I have a vested interest in this place.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate you so much for sharing that. I'm always learning new things about Kenneth. And the access to news and information saved my life thing is something I actually also feel. So Kenny, you and I should trauma bond over that one day. Who's next up for us? Brit Harley, co-founder of the Newark News and Story Collaborative and founder of 5 Words Media. Just a stone's throw from me down Bloomfield Avenue in Newark. Brit, please let us know who you are, what you do, and what your vision is for community media where you live.
Thanks so much, Simon. And happy Wednesday to everyone. I'm Brit Harley from Newark. I've had the pleasure and the honor of being a John S. Knight Fellow and a senior John S. Knight Fellow working in communities of color and thinking about how to fill information gaps. And so as the co-founder of the Newark News and Story Collaborative, our mission is to really think about how can we create equitable media that can inform and engage and tell the stories of our community. We're a small team of residents, young people, community leaders, organizers, writers, artists, journalists, all creating different types of projects and really using our community engagement skills as a way to create partnerships in our community. But more than anything, how can we collaboratively work together to fill what we know are the information gaps here in the city? And so we launched the collaborative at the height of the pandemic in 2020 in partnership with Free Press and the Center for Cooperative Media. And so actually this month, we've turned 3 years old. And so this work has been informed by 3 years of listening and including residents in the process of what we build, the stories we tell, and how we share information here in the city. And so doing the initial information gap assessment in 2020 really informs and still informs our work today. And so what we learned from that information assessment is that Newark residents said that they needed information about COVID-19 health, utility rental assistance. At the time, school was going into virtual learning. So there were a lot of people saying that they needed resources for virtual learning, and something that residents foresaw as a challenge in the months to come is the lack of economic opportunities. And so what we wanted to launch was a community media lab and a reporting fellowship to really bring residents who are organizers, community leaders, some who are content creators, in a 10-week training where we provide them a stipend and really think about how they can tell stories or use our training to further their community projects and ongoing community work. And so to date, we've trained over 30 residents, and we've also launched 5 Words Media as a way to continue to platform residents who are doing not just incredible work, but who are really directly impacting residents that, you know, are impacted by these information gap areas. And so we definitely use a lot of community engagement strategies and grassroots strategies to think about how we engage and listen to our community. And so we know it's one part creating content, telling stories, but also telling, you know, stories from people we usually don't hear from. Newark is severely underserved. When we think about local media, and even national media, specifically looking at folks' needs, but also the type of media that they can see themselves in and engage with. And so, you know, we work with community at the center. We think about how we can not just have community at the center, but also how we can partner with them. And so an example of that is that at the end of June, we hosted a community event block party in partnership with a community garden here. And so knowing that, you know, food insecurity, all 5 wards in Newark are all, you know, food deserts. And so with that understanding, we know how important it is to make sure folks know where things are. So we hosted an event in partnership with the local community garden here, Al Munir Farms. They have a urban garden in the North Ward of Newark. And so we work with that farm to give out fresh fruits and veggies. We had over 100 people come out. We awarded some community members. We also create tools such as resource guides that directly point residents to the information that they need. And so we had those guides available at that community event. And so our work also looks like that, telling the stories, but also how do we create spaces to partner where resources are so folks can be, privy and be informed about where they can get those resources. And so really, really proud of the work that we've been doing here in the city of Newark, just intentionally partnering with residents, not just to tell the stories of our community, but also think about how can we work collaboratively to also fill some of these information gaps. And also how do we platform, Black, Indigenous, people of color, marginalized, multi-marginalized communities here in Newark by not just providing them an opportunity to, have a stipend in our lab, but how can we platform them? How can we really create our own newswire in a space where we can really share information, tell other stories, in a space where folks feel like they're a part of the bigger story in the state, but also feel a part of their city.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brit. Again, always inspired by these folks when they speak, more so today. Even though, I've with a lot of people on this call, I've been working with them for some time, but you never really get to hear people sort of present their story and like what they're doing like this. So it's always great to hear the holistic vision and also the vision that resonates across all these different communities in the state. So it's my turn to speak. I'm gonna briefly share, give myself 5 minutes to share about the work I'm doing at the Bloomfield Information Project, just north of this, like I said, of Brit's work in Newark. The Bloomfield Information Project is an initiative of the Community Information Cooperative. We're a national nonprofit organization that, sorry, I'm going to hide myself view because it's distracting me. I apologize. I'll start again. We're a nonprofit leading journalism innovation in the public interest at a national level. We have a couple of different programs, info districts, just transition. But in New Jersey, the key driver of our work has been the Bloomfield Information Project, our lab in Essex County, New Jersey, that was launched in response to the pandemic and in response to the acute need for news and information at a time when people didn't know what was closed, what was open in their communities. I tell the story of the first day of lockdown, the mayor sort of released a PDF statement and said that they would continue doing updates as the pandemic continued. And then the second day and the third day came and nothing was happening. Meanwhile, we were doing this social listening to try to understand the community's news and information needs. And we realized we can be a distributive news organization. We are seeing what's happening. We are reading, at this point now, we follow more than 200 sources of news and information a day in our community. We are seeing what's happening in the community, and now we are reporting it back to them. And in this way, we're building a new model for local news and information in the 21st century. We are starting with the understanding that the digital space is a real space and people are sharing news and information there. Community production is already happening, whether you're talking about community influencers to your local government, to your local business. So our goal is to make sure people have access to the news and information that's being produced in this community, access to a basic standard of information equity, so that we can then begin to build upon it. And the way the Bloomfield Information Project is doing that is by launching community reporter corps, where we are training and paying residents to take notes at public meetings, conduct information needs interviews, and write explainers about community topics, like everything as simple as what is the farmers market, to what is the zoning board, to what's up finally with the water. And our goal is to build an entirely community-centered news organization here in Bloomfield. Our goal ultimately is to expand that work and begin serving other communities as well with this core news product that we've developed. And all of this is part of our vision for creating a new standard for hyperlocal public media in the state and in the nation. We envision the existence of these things we've called info districts, hyperlocal public media funds that can support media projects like the ones you're hearing about today, but also new ones and also ones in places where there are no news providers, so that people can have access to the news and information they need to live their best lives, so they can know about who's running for office, where the food distribution is, where can I get job training. Without building those connections and bringing that basic level of news and information to people, we're never going to be able to overcome the larger crises that face civic participation in New Jersey and the United States. So our goal is to create this civic participation engine in every community, like the Bloomfield Information Project, that can inspire and network with others to create a new standard for engagement and civic participation in the state. We hope that this inspires other communities to do the same. And I'm always very, very thankful for the people on this call who are moving with us towards this more participatory, liberatory form of media here in New Jersey and across the country. So that's my shtick. And I hope that it does a good job transitioning us from the local conversation to the state conversation. Because while the Bloomfield Information Project does this local work, we're also organizing at a state and obviously national level to make sure that we are moving together towards a more just and free, a media that informs a more just and free society. So some of that work includes working with some of the folks you'll hear today, like Cassandra Etienne, who's up next at South Jersey Information Equity Project. Cassandra works at the Center for Cooperative Media. I think you've been there for less than a year, but Cassandra has made a fantastic impact and has been a fantastic leader to work with. So Cassandra, I'll give it to you. Let folks know about the South Jersey Information Equity Project, your work, and your vision for community media in the state.
Okay, hi everybody, and thanks so much, Simon, for the invite to speak with everyone today. As Simon said, my name is Cassandra Etienne, and I'm just shy of 1 year at the center. I'm the Assistant Director for Programming and Membership at CCM, which is a grant-funded program within the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Our mission is to grow and strengthen local journalism and support and inform society in New Jersey and beyond. And today I'm very excited to talk to you about one of our initiatives, which is the South Jersey Information Equity Project, which helps to further this goal by addressing media inequity and improving the quality and quantity of news and information content produced by and for communities of color in the region. First, I'll just give you some background about the project, and then I'll tell you about some of the recent developments with SGIEP, and then touch briefly on where we envision SGIEP will go next. So one of my favorite aspects of the project is, like many initiatives at the center, is how organically it came about. Basically in 2019, the director at the center, Stephanie Murray, was having a conversation with Manny Smith, then the president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. And we're talking about the growing news deserts in South Jersey and how the lack of community news outlets had impacted, in particular, communities of color in the region. I should note that in 2018, the South Jersey Journal, which was the state's largest regularly published Black-owned newspaper, folded after a 7-year run. And so the journal had covered business, politics, local events with a focus on South Jersey. So the loss of this publication, just one example of the potential news and information gaps created in the local media landscape. So as the center and PABJ teamed up to figure out how to help improve the situation, this is how the South Jersey Information Equity Project came about. In its first phase, the center hired veteran journalist, two-time PABJ, NABJ President Sarah Glover, who's also a resident of South Jersey, and is back in the area, recently hired by WHYY as president for News and Civic Dialogue. So as part of her research, Sarah Glover identified 3 critical needs. The first is a clear need for more resources to elevate the skills and visibility of Black journalists in South Jersey, the need for more information sharing and storytelling by and for Black communities, and the need for more support for Black-led media ventures. So she, held community town halls, interviewed Black journalists and media makers in the area to kind of come up with these takeaways. And so this has helped to inform our work, which is funded with the support of the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, the Nicholson Foundation, and also the Independence Public Media Foundation. With this support, we've been able to move from phase 1 to phase 2, in which this summer, we're very happy to have welcomed 4 talented and enthusiastic fellows to begin reporting on stories in South Jersey with a focus on Camden, Gloucester, and Burlington counties. So to begin, the fellows conducted a series of virtual convenings, so 3 of them, 1 for each of the counties, to really engage with the community and have their feedback and input and have that be a part of their story development and storytelling. So we asked them about, what they think of South Jersey, how it's been covered in the news or not, and what information they want to see most. So feedback ranged from, a desire to see more stories that are positive, that are restorative narratives as opposed to just quick hits on crime stories, for instance. The need for centralized information on upcoming arts and cultural events. There's also the need to just address some of the harmful stereotypes about South Jersey communities. And so the fellows took this feedback and it's informing the 2 to 3 pieces that they're producing over the course of their fellowship. And another aspect of SJIP, which I also appreciate, is the built-in opportunities for mentoring from local Black journalists, including Melanie Burney, education reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Clyde Hughes, frontrunner New Jersey, Velvet McNeil, who's a photojournalist and an educator, and Celeste Whitaker of the Courier Post. So these individuals are the advisors for the project. And in addition to this mentoring, we help to increase the reach of these stories by partnering with local news outlets to co-publish the fellows' reporting. And so far, we've addressed at least 2 of the community needs identified by Sarah Glover, helping to provide resources and elevate the skills and visibility of Black journalists in South Jersey, and helping to support information sharing and storytelling by and for Black communities. In the future, we want to continue addressing these goals by expanding the fellowships, providing more career development and training opportunities to Black journalists in South Jersey. And it is our goal to one day ultimately provide increased support for Black-led media ventures as well. So I guess, hopefully I'm not over time. Thanks everyone for listening. And thanks again to Simon for extending the invitation to speak with you all today. Please check us out on sjiep.org, see what we're up to next.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassandra. That was so great. And no, not over time at all, under time. Please check out the work that Cassandra's doing. We're all also going to be sharing a bunch of links to all the participants or all the folks who've registered, so you can catch up with these projects afterwards. Next up is somebody I've been saying I keep learning from all of these people all the time, but I was just at an event last week where Vanessa delivered a masterclass in organizing. So the Camden event, Joe, the Center for Cooperative Media held an event in Camden, New Jersey for the launch of the Stories Invincible project. Was responding to Joe Sevenditas in the chat, who is also works at the Center for Cooperative Media and is keeping me on my toes today. But anyway, I'd like to pass it over to Vanessa Maria Graber to share about the work that the New Jersey Community Media Collective is doing. Vanessa, please tell us about you, your work, and your vision for community media in the state.
Hey, thanks, Simon. Those are kind words that you shared. It was, it's my favorite thing to do, right? To get out into the community and talk to people about media, which is kind of what we're doing today. So I'm Vanessa Maria Graber. I work at Free Press. Free Press is a media advocacy organization. We are not a news publication, although a lot of people call us the Free Press. But we're a nonprofit, and we advocate for media and technology rights. I am the director of the News Voices program, and I'm in Cherry Hill, Camden County, which is in southern New Jersey, a suburb of the Philly metro area. So we see a lot in this side of the state. And a lot of the media comes from Philadelphia, whereas in North Jersey, a lot of the media is coming from the New York market. So as I mentioned, Free Press is an advocacy organization, and to realize our vision for an equitable media system that protects the rights of communities to connect and communicate in the United States, our News Voices project organizes with communities, journalists, and newsrooms to build power and advocate for the news, information, and narratives people need to thrive. We do this by collectively dreaming up new media futures, addressing media harms, designing equitable engagement strategies, building power with communities, and advocating for journalism repair and transformation. And if you haven't checked out our Media 2070 project, you should definitely read that essay. It's a history of harm and racism in the media, but also talks about these new media futures. A big part of our work at News Voices is training and supporting journalists and organizers around the country who want stronger local journalism infrastructure. So my background has really been, for the last 20 years, working as part of the media justice movement and being an educator. My strategy is largely based in popular education and meeting with people one-on-one, meeting in small groups, doing town halls, listening sessions. And it's rooted in the work of Paulo Freire, whose view on education is really about how we can empower and liberate people through education. Media, news, information, journalism are different tools we have in order to educate people. And so that's a big part of what drives me and why I do this work. And so part of what I did before was worked in community radio, working for various stations across the country and co-founding WPPM in Philadelphia, where we worked to train hundreds of people in media production and storytelling. And the biggest takeaway from my work in community media was that not everyone has to go to journalism school in order to tell stories and report news and information. Now, media, news and information, and journalism, they're all defined differently. But when we have cities across the state where there is nothing, there's no media outlets, there's no stories, there's no news, we really rely on people who are not trained in journalism in order to fill those gaps. Many of the people on this call are community organizers, or they're, as I call, community people, right? Have lots of connections and big networks to folks in their city. A lot of us work on many other issues outside of media, right? We work on local issues that affect our towns. We work on things like climate crisis, marijuana legalization, healthcare access. And so we have dual identities when it comes to informing people and also working with the community. I worked in AM news radio for many different stations, and that was the biggest difference for me is not seeing the connection to the community that you've just heard all of these people have. And so with that, we've been trying to build a movement across New Jersey to have community-centered journalism. So the News Voices Project started about 7 years ago. It started with town halls and listening sessions with Mike Rispoli, who will be presenting a little bit later. And we were able to build a network of people who were values aligned in the fact that we felt that there was a lot of negative stereotypes. There was not enough civic information, and people just didn't have access to critical information gaps, like getting basic resources and election information. And so for the last 7 years, we've been building this movement. We've been organizing, and we've been trying to think of all the ways in which we can revolutionize journalism in New Jersey. So I just want to clarify that this is a social movement, right? And social movements have many components. And so one of the things that I learned from community radio is having a network of stations and station managers from across the country working together during the pandemic, like when the pandemic first started in March of 2020. It was really, really helpful, right? This spirit of mutual aid and solidarity, sharing resources. At that time, we had to switch over from in-studio production to virtual production, and many of us did not know how to do that. So we largely were able to pull this off because we worked together and we weren't competing against each other. And so when I started working for Free Press 2 years ago, doing information needs assessments with Outlier Media and the Center for Cooperative Media, I saw that people were doing very similar things across the state. Their goals were pretty similar. People were very connected to the community. And they were largely working in very small groups and not enough resources. And so the idea to form the Community Media Collective came about pretty organically as we started to share the same spaces and be present at many of the same meetings and have similar conversations about what to do to solve the local news crisis and how do we liberate more funding for this effort. And so last year we formed the Community Media Collective, and it's basically we aim to be a statewide mutual aid and solidarity network for hyperlocal online or broadcast community news projects that want to develop shared resources and advocate together. So our initial members include everyone that's here: Stories of Atlantic City, the Trenton Journal, the Newark News and Story Collaborative, and the Bloomfield Info Project. And I act as a facilitator, so I organize the meetings and meet with people one-on-one and help keep us moving along on a plan. We work together to address the unique information needs that Black, Indigenous, and people of color have, and Spanish-speaking communities in New Jersey for civic and health-related information. We strategize on creating content that serves our communities, and we identify mutual needs and interests, share lessons learned around news production, offer training and coaching, and develop models for sustainability, content production, and more. What's unique? Well, we use a consensus-based decision-making model, which means we bring forth proposals as a group, we discuss them, and vote on how to proceed forward. Every organization gets one vote, no matter how big or how small they are. As a facilitator, I don't vote on decisions, but help to bring consensus. But the real flex is that there is a lot of love in this group, right? And we are doing this out of love for our community. And we do share the same vision largely, right? Which is to make sure that people in our communities have everything that they need, including information. And having a group of like-minded people to vision with you, to experiences, to work with volunteers and community members has been really transformative. And so I encourage folks to look for other people in their towns and form your own groups. Start building these networks, start organizing, and stop competing against each other, right? If we don't work together and share resources, we are not going to make it. So thanks for hearing about our projects, and I'll pass it back off to Simon.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you so much. I really appreciate getting to work through consensus process with the other folks here. Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to mention was that last sort of advice you gave, which is like work with others. The tip I give for any person who's like, how can I help? Like I'm not a journalist. How do I support engaged, informed communities? Like start a group chat, like with your neighbors. Like say hello, start a group chat, throw a barbecue, and that's often like the best way to start. So amplifying that. All right, who do we have next? Next up, Mike Rispoli. We're going to get to hear from Mike, who's a good friend of mine, the person whose first News Voices campaign in New Jersey is where I cut my teeth doing media organizing as a volunteer running around the state. He's like, why is this guy at this meeting again? And yet here we are. So we're going to get to hear from Mike about the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium, which is the state body created through the New Jersey Civic Information Bill to fund local news and information projects in the state. Mike, take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Simon. Thanks for organizing this. And, just want to echo what Vanessa said. All the folks on this call, and you can kind of see in the chat, it's just so awesome to be in community with so many people who are really reimagining what local news and local media can look like in New Jersey. And so it's just like a real honor to be able to be with all of you today. So my name is Mike Rispoli. I'm the Senior Director of Journalism Policy at Free Press. I get to work with Vanessa and many of the other people on this call on a pretty regular basis. But I'm here today to talk about this New Jersey Civic Information Consortium, which I am a board member of. And the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium is an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization that funds initiatives to benefit the state's civic life and meet the evolving information needs of New Jersey's communities. It's a first of its kind in the country. The consortium receives public funds and invests those into news and information projects that are intended to fill in the gaps left by the shrinking commercial media market in the state. Like Vanessa mentioned, New Jersey has a long history of local media because so much of the broadcast media comes from out of state, whether it's Philadelphia, New Jersey. And so as local media, especially the commercial media, have evolved and changed over the years in consolidation and journalist layoffs, it's effectively created news deserts all around the state of New Jersey. And many of the projects that are popping up, like Stories of Atlantic City or Five Words Media, Trenton Journal, Bloomfield Info Project, a lot of those projects that are popping up to fill in those gaps are non-commercial in nature. And so the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium is a way to leverage public funds to also raise philanthropic dollars and invest them into projects that are really meeting the information needs of communities in New Jersey that otherwise really wouldn't be commercially sustainable. And the consortium was created in 2018 after an 18-month grassroots campaign led by Free Press, but also really informed and by all the folks on this call, where thousands of New Jersey residents took action, talking to lawmakers, lobbying state government, speaking at committee hearings, showing up to town halls, signing petitions, making phone calls, asking the state to use innovative public policy, in particular public funds, to address the growing local news crisis in the state. And so what's really kind of interesting and exciting about the consortium is that this was an initiative that really sprung up from communities in New Jersey who were demanding better local media. And so the consortium itself has been, while it was created in 2018, it started doing its grant making in 2020. Thus far, it's given out nearly $1.5 million in grants across the state, both to legacy media organizations as well as innovative startups. Also wanted to mention my fellow board member, Robin Wilson Glover from New Jersey Advanced Media is also on this call. And Robin and I and the board, we've been fortunate to be able to invest this or to be oversee these grants into some really exciting projects. And this year, the state of New Jersey allocated $3 million of state funds to the consortium. So just a year and a half ago, that investment was $500,000. Last year was $2 million. This year was $3 million. So the state of New Jersey is seeing the impact of the consortium in supporting local news in the state. It's been increasing its public funds, and we've been able to raise private dollars too. So what feels really kind of interesting about the consortium, especially given the fact that it's kind of a first of its kind in the country, is that I think it's kind of showing how public policy can be used to address the kind of the growing gaps in local news coverage. So when you think about pairing public policy with all of these projects that are on this call and others who are kind of changing how local journalism is done, we believe that public funding can be used to cultivate and support and hopefully help sustain projects that are really community-centered and really geared towards creating a new type of local media system. But before I kind of hop off my bit and pass it back to Simon, I think it's really important to note that the consortium is also serving as a model for other states. States like California, for instance, are now debating a bill that is modeled after the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium. Other states like New York and Massachusetts and Illinois, Colorado, New Mexico have also explored similar models where you have an independent nonprofit that would then receive public funds to invest in local news projects. And I feel really fortunate to be a part of this initiative from the jump and to be a part of this initiative with so many of the folks on this call. So I'll pass it back to you, Simon.
Thank you so much, Mike. And last but not least, the anchor for our lightning talks from the director of the anchor organization in the state, the Center for Cooperative Media, Stephanie Murray. Stephanie,
Yes.
please tell us about your work, what you do, and also about the statewide visioning process that has sort of encompassed all of the stakeholders that have been represented here today. And you could take us off into that grand, beautiful promised land. So please.
That's a big ask. Yeah, I'm more like the caboose and the closer here. Like I said earlier, but hi, everybody. I am Stephanie Murray at the Center for Cooperative Media, colleagues with Cassandra, who gave an excellent explanation of what the center does earlier. And we've dropped some links in the chat. I worked in newspapers for 15 years before moving to journalism adjacent roles. And the center is really proud to be a key anchor in the state of New Jersey for work to support access to local news and information, because access to local news and information affects the health of our communities. It affects so much. And we all know that. And we've talked about this a little bit so far, that like many other places in the United States, Jersey has seen a rapid decline in some communities of the amount and quality of news that's available to people who live here. And we have really glaring information gaps, especially facing communities of color. And like I said, the health of our communities is threatened when people lose sources of and access to reliable news and information. And we can see this happening in all sorts of places all over the country, where struggling news organizations have been replaced by sometimes social media groups or different types of chats that are often filled with misinformation, arguments, polarization. That lack of access to trusted factual information is also a barrier to participation in civic life and can lead directly to negative outcomes for individuals and for communities as a whole. That's something that we have studied here at Montclair State University through our research looking at the local news ecosystem in New Jersey and some of our research studying collaboration and journalism across the United States. So we were really proud to be part of an effort that involved several people who have spoken today and many, many others in 2021. We had about 100 people who worked together over 5 virtual sessions to create a shared mission, a shared vision, a set of values, and then a common agenda to help fix all the things that I just mentioned are challenges facing folks who live here in New Jersey. So this year, we're starting to kind of lay the groundwork for that. So real briefly, I know I have a couple minutes left. I want to talk about the vision, the mission, and some of the things that common agenda and all those people who collectively worked on it represent. So our vision is a healthy democracy where all New Jerseyans have the news and information they need to make informed decisions, engage in their community, and shape the world around them. And so the mission is to work collaboratively to make New Jersey news and information more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable for all of our communities. All the values for the common agenda and the collective group, we were tentatively calling ourselves Rebuild New Jersey Media, Rebuild New Jersey Media Now. Our values for Rebuild New Jersey Media Now are committed in equity to everything we do. We are committed to equity in everything that we do. Our values include equal access to information, shared power, inclusive decision-making, and transparency and accountability at every level. our coalition, we really believe in transparent, accessible, and representative news and information. And so the common agenda was built around 4 key strategic pillars. The first is to address news and information inequities. And we have several strategies under this. Strengthen news and information infrastructure, again, with strategies underneath that. Enhance and expand quality, trusted journalism, and diversify and grow funding for local news. So we had a leadership team who helped lead the collective visioning with some guidance from outside consultants. And after we finished and wrapped up our last convening, the leadership team stepped back and started to talk about, okay, how can we use a collective impact model to put our common agenda into action? And we've mapped out several ways that that we can do that. But one thing we kept coming back to is that we really need funding. We need we need access to money to be able to put some of these things into play, to be able to take that common agenda and use a collective impact model to make it a reality. So we decided to focus on that to start with. And the leadership team is still meeting. And one of the things that we are seeking to do is to work very closely and collaboratively with the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium, of which Mike just told you about, and Robin is here as well, to work together to build funding streams that are not competitive, because the Rebuild New Jersey Media Now Coalition wants to be highly collaborative with the Civic Information Consortium, with other groups. I mean, I work with the Civic Information Consortium, members of who you've heard from today are on the board or are grantees. Like, we are all very intertwined in the media ecosystem here. But more funding needs to be brought to the table to help strengthen our communities and to help the health of residents and communities across this entire state. And so that funding pot needs to be bigger. And that's what we're going to be working on. Hopefully setting up a fund with the Civic Information Consortium, fingers crossed, that will be directly put to use to support that common agenda. So there you go, Simon.
Thank you, Sandy. That's the promised land, though, right?
That's the promised land.
Hopefully we get to see it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing that. As we move to wrap up, y'all, these projects are representative of some of the projects happening in New Jersey. There are so many more people and organizations, often, either in collaboration with the Center for Cooperative Media or Free Press, or the Civic Information Consortium, or our local partners who are helping make this work happen. They're not here, but we want to make sure that we acknowledge them, and all the people who brought us here. The New Jersey media landscape has grown a lot and changed a lot over the last 10 years because of investment from organizations like Democracy Fund, Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, and the work of the Center for Cooperative Media. So I love this little 10-year check-in. Maybe we could do another one in 10 years about how amazing we all still are when the time comes. So thank you again for those who've attended. There has been a few Q&As in the chat, but they have been answered. We will follow up with all the registrants with the video of this call, as well as links to all the projects who've been featured here. Thank you so much for attending. Take care.